Good morning, evening, midday. I don't know when you're listening to this, but for me, it's morning. So, welcome back. We are in Numbers chapter 22, and this is one of those that you probably heard a few mentions of this story, but you didn't really know where it came from because most people don't study numbers. So, uh, this is the story of the talking donkey. So, we are going to get into Numbers chapter 22. There's not a whole lot of difference, so I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. I know it's a little easier to hear, so that's where we're going. Let's jump in. Numbers chapter 22. If this is your first video, please go back and watch some other ones because that will help you understand the context. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or anything that I say you want to question, go for it. I'm not sensitive. I've raised 5 kids. You can't say anything to hurt my feelings. So ask the question. You're not the only one that wants to know. I guarantee other people do. And in fact, almost every time a question gets asked, I get another person saying, I was going to ask it, but I didn't want to sound stupid. Totally okay. You can ask. I'm not going to call you out and make you sound stupid. I promise. No, I don't know, I might, but no, I won't. I'm just kidding. So, Numbers chapter 22. Then the people of Israel traveled to the plains of Moab and camped east of the Jordan River across from Jericho. Balak, son of Zippor, the Moabite king, had seen everything the Israelites did to the Amorites. And when the people of Moab saw how many Israelites there were, they were terrified. The king of Moab said to the elders of Midian, This mob will devour everything in sight, like an ox devours grass in the field. So Balak, king of Moab, sent messengers to call on Balaam, son of Beor, who was living in his native land of Pethor, near the Euphrates River. His message said, Look, a vast horde of people have arrived from Egypt. They cover the face of the earth and are threatening me. Please come and curse these people for me because they are too powerful for me. Then perhaps I will be able to conquer them and drive them from the land. I know that blessings fall on any people you bless and curses fall on people you curse. Balak's messengers, who were elders of Moab and Midian, set out with money to pay Balaam to place a curse on Israel. They went to Balaam and delivered Balak's message to him. Stay here overnight, Balaam said. In the morning, I will tell you whatever the Lord directs me to say. So the officials from Moab stayed there with Balaam. Now, if we jump over to the complete Jewish Bible, in verse 8, it says, He said to them, Stay here overnight, and I will bring you back whatever answer Adonai tells me. And the reason is because he would not have said Lord, more than likely. He would have said Adonai, a chief God, a high God. So, and in a minute, we're going to find out, excuse me, he knows God's actual name. So that night, God came to Balaam and asked him, who are these men visiting you? Balaam said to God, Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent me this message. Look, a vast horde of people have arrived from Egypt, and they cover the face of the earth. Come and curse these people for me, then perhaps I will be able to stand up to them and drive them out of the land. But God said to Balaam, Do not go with them. You are not to curse these people, for they have been blessed. Let's hear. Sorry. The next morning, Balaam got up and told Balak's officials, Go on home. The Lord will not let me go with you. So the Moabite officials returned to King Balak and reported, Balaam refused to come with us. Then Balak tried again. This time he sent a larger number of even more distinguished officials than those he had sent the first time. They went to Balaam and delivered this message to him. This is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Please do not let anything stop you from coming to help me. I will pay you very well and do whatever you tell me. Just come and curse these people for me. But Balaam responded to Balak's messages. Even if Balak were to give me his palace filled with silver and gold, I would be powerless to do anything against the will of the Lord my God. But stay here one more night, and I will see if the Lord has anything else to say to me. So if we jump over to verse 19 in the complete Jewish Bible, it says, Now please, you two, stay here tonight so that I may find out what else Adonai will say to me. So he's using very generic words for God. And that's important because once he learns God's actual name, or he knows it, but once he uses it, then things kind of change a little bit. So that night, God came to Balaam and told him, since these men have come for you, get up and go with them, but do only what I tell you to do. So the next morning, Balaam got up, saddled his donkey, and started off with the Moabite officials. But God was angry that Balaam was going, so he sent the angel of the Lord to stand in the road to block his way. As Balaam and two servants were riding along, Balaam's donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand. The donkey bolted off the road into the field, but Balaam beat it and turned it back to the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood at a place where the road narrowed between two vineyard walls. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it tried to squeeze by and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. So Balaam beat the donkey again. Then the angel of the Lord moved further down the road and stood in a place too narrow for the donkey to get by at all. This time, when the donkey saw the angel, it laid down under Balaam. In a fit of rage, Balaam beat the animal again with his staff. Then the Lord gave the donkey the ability to speak. What have I done to you that deserves your beating me 3 times? It asked Balaam. You have made me look like a fool, Balaam shouted. If I had a sword with me, I would kill you. But I am the same donkey you have ridden all your life, the donkey answered. Have I ever done anything like this before? No, Balaam admitted. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the roadway with a drawn sword in his hand. Balaam bowed his head and fell face down on the ground before him. Why did you beat your donkey those 3 times? The angel of the Lord demanded. Look, I have come to block your way because you are stubbornly resisting me. 3 times the donkey saw me and shied away. Otherwise, I would certainly have killed you by now and spared the donkey. Then Balaam confessed to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I didn't realize you were standing in the road to block my way. I will return home if you are against my going. And one of those important points there is if you're aware of who God is and you're studying his word and you have a close relationship, you would recognize this angel of the Lord standing in front of you not to go somewhere. So that's really important. Sometimes you think, well, how would I know? Well, you would know because you would read, you would study, and you would pray, and you would understand what an angel of the Lord standing in front of you represented or what it was. So, but the angel of the Lord told Balaam, go with these men, but say only what I tell you to say. So Balaam went on with Balak's officials. When King Balak heard that Balaam was on his way, he went out to meet him at the Moabite town on the Arnon River at the farthest border of his land. Didn't I send you an urgent invitation? Why didn't you come right away? Balak asked Balaam. Didn't you believe me when I said I would reward you richly? Balaam replied, look, now I have come, but I have no power to say whatever I want. I will speak only the message that God puts in my mouth. Then Balaam accompanied Balak to Kiriath Huzoth, where the king sacrificed cattle and sheep. He sent portions of the meat to Balaam and the officials who were with them. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to the Barmoth Baal. From there, he could see some of the people of Israel spread out below him. So he tells him he has no power to say anything on his own. So it was really kind of pointless for him to come, but he came anyway. So remember, too, there's nothing sacred about book names in the Bible. That's just something we came up with, the chapters and verses and how that's split. The Hebrews tended to use the first few words for its title. Greeks used a word that kind of expressed the overall meaning or purpose. And then in the New Testament, obviously, it's the author or who it was addressed to. Some of that was just kind of arbitrarily done. It doesn't mean any sacredness or anything like that. So most of us remember this talking donkey story because pastors love to work it into their sermons, but probably the story of Balak and Balaam is embellished based on something that did happen. I'm not saying it's not completely 100% accurate. I'm just saying that it probably was embellished only because there's words in there that's like, they covered the whole desert. I'm completely overrun. Some of that is just exaggeration. So Balak was worried about these Israelites on his border, obviously. The Israelite army had moved right through the Amorites, so the people of Moab knew they probably couldn't stop them. So the solution, let's use magic. Let's go find a magician, a sorcerer. So they tried to hire Balaam, a well-known magician and sorcerer. Balaam lived in Mesopotamia. He was a Gentile like us. He was a seer, a diviner, and a sorcerer. In a land full of pagan gods and a fully developed mystery religion system, for some reason, this Balaam seemed to know who the God of Israel was. How or why is not really explained, but he seems to have known who God was. So we see that he knows and respects Jehovah and is trying to some degree to obey him. I'm sure he doesn't follow him or fear him necessarily, but he does know who he is and respects him from some standpoint because he's seen and heard the things that has happened. So in Numbers 31, Balaam is killed by the Israelites. We'll see that in a few chapters. And then in Deuteronomy 21, we find out Balaam intended to curse the Israelites. It wasn't that he was doing the right thing by blessing instead of cursing. It's that he feared for his life if he went against God. So it wasn't that he thought cursing was wrong. He just was worried about himself. So we have God redeeming and guiding his nation of Hebrews. But then Jehovah communicates with a Gentile prophet who is not part of his set apart people. So correctly telling the future and speaking an inspired message from God can indicate an interaction with God, but not necessarily indicate a right relationship with Jehovah. God can tell anyone anything, but it doesn't necessarily mean because a donkey's speaking for God that the donkey has a right relationship with God. It might mean that God's just using that donkey. So Deuteronomy 13 says false prophets can at times see the future. Even though King Saul continually accurately prophesied, he was condemned by the Lord as a bad king. So God can use any tool. That's the principle and kind of the pattern we're learning here too. So this was common in Christ's time too. Matthew 7 said Yeshua warned that in the end times, driving out demons and ecstatic spiritual acts, and miracles would happen. But these acts were not necessarily signs proving that a person was guaranteed a place in heaven. This was a good reason to be a healthy skeptic of people who speak for God. If we know the Bible, we can move past a lot of that kind of stuff. So only two places do animals speak, the serpent in Genesis and then the donkey here in Numbers. So King Balak is worried, so he hires a professional sorcerer because, he's like, hey, I got to try anything. A false prophet at times can be accurate. This is why we need to study God's word, because sometimes they're right, but sometimes they just got lucky, and sometimes God's using it for something else. We gotta watch all their words. So verse 9, the biblical prophet is a seer, one who is in right standing with God and one who sees, because he has been given a message directly from God. Therefore, that message can't possibly be wrong. If it is wrong, then he wasn't a seer. So verse 9 has Jehovah asking Balaam, the Gentile diviner, a rhetorical question. He says, who are these men with you, and what did they ask you to do? 3 times in the Bible, Jehovah appears to non-Hebrews to warn them from doing what they intended to do to his chosen people. All 3 times are recorded in the Torah. You would not know that if you didn't study the Torah. So the first was with King Abimelech when he was going to take Abraham's wife, Sarah, and the second was with Jacob, Jacob's uncle Laban. Remember, he was having him keep working and he was trying to get him to do what he wanted. Jehovah tells Balaam that he cannot curse these people because they're blessed. You can't curse what God's blessed. So this is referring back to Genesis and the covenant the Lord made with Abraham. The Lord is saying it is impossible to curse that which he has blessed. And 2, to curse God's people will bring divine retribution. So should you be against the Jewish people? No, they're God's chosen people. Whether you like that or not is irrelevant. He chose them, and he says people who curse them will suffer divine retribution. Don't do that. So Balaam was trying to be morally neutral, kind of, like the UN, quote unquote. But the problem is Jehovah has no such thing as moral neutrality in the Bible. He's not about that at all. So as Jesus said, you're either for me or you're against me. There's no middle ground here. So in verse 18, Balaam says that he is fully under the command of Jehovah, my Elohim. And the reason I didn't read that is because I forgot. But in the original Hebrew, he says God's holy name, Jehovah, my Adonai, my Elohim. So he says he knows who God is, and he says he is the chief God. Now, that doesn't mean his heart was there. That just means he recognized it. So, again, why versions matter. But Balaam is just a spiritualist. He believes in Jehovah just as he believes in an unknown number of other gods. In fact, Balaam was boasting here. He was trying to impress this delegation of government officials with his influence in the invisible realm of the gods, and particularly with the God of the Israelites. He's like, oh yeah, I know the God of the Israelites. I know who that is. So in verse 19, Balaam tells the second group of men to stay the night. He's going to consult God and see if he's changed his mind. And Balaam is used to having gods change their mind because that's kind of what he did. He negotiated with gods. False gods, but God is not pleased that Balaam wants to go to Balak. Here we have an example of God operating within men's free will. He's letting him, but he's not happy about it. Balaam was not through negotiating with God either. And that's what we do. We know full well that the Lord's will is what it is, and to not do something is wrong, but we go ahead with our plan anyway, and we keep negotiating with God. That's what Balaam's doing here. Balaam is spiritually blind. He cannot see the angel of the Lord standing in front of him because he's spiritually blind. Balaam shows his determination to do what he has set out to do. He keeps beating this donkey. I really, really, really want to do it. I've heard somebody say, sometimes God closes the door because he doesn't want you to go through it. And sometimes we beat on that door and rip it off the hinges just to go through it, even though God closed it. Balaam shows his determination, though. And I can't tell you how many times I've tried to go around God, and it's brought me nothing but pain and grief. And I've regretted it every time. The Lord enables the donkey to speak. In other words, hey, stupid, can't you figure out that something extraordinary is going on here? I love the fact he answers the donkey's question. How dumb must he have felt when he's talking to a donkey? But, the Lord points out that if it weren't for the donkey doing the right thing, the Lord would have used that sword on Balaam. It's like, had that donkey, the one you think stupid and worthless, had not done that, I would have killed you. So Balak's concern was not whether this curse would work, but whether Balaam actually do it. That's what he wanted. A curse was only effective when the cursed person or object was in view. That's why I kept taking him to see everybody. And this was just tradition, halakha, normal custom in that time, just like we have today. We have certain customs and traditions. And even though they don't make sense looking back sometimes, right now we look at them, we think, oh, that makes sense that we do that. But maybe we need to re-examine that. That's how we started this Bible study too, is we need to know why we believe what we believe. And can you defend that? And I think a majority of Christians cannot. And we need to be able to. The only way to do that is to study God's word, which is what you're doing. You're doing phenomenal. You are achieving more than most people do on their walk with Christ. And I'm so proud of you. Keep it going. Love God, love people, and change the world.